Hello, welcome to my channel. Today is day number 18th of something new meditations regarding dreams and dream interpretation, or at least something to that nature. I'm not really sure at this point what I'm doing, but I am actually going to go into a dream today that I had about 10 years ago. And the idea and the concept of this dream turned into a story, which is called The Copper Coins. I actually read this story aloud and posted it to this channel. So if you go further down to like the videos from like 3 or 4 years ago, you will find me reading a reading of that story on this channel. And the story itself is really, it's sort of a metaphor, but it's told in a very fairy tale-ish type of way. It has a very Grimm style to it. Grimm, like Brothers Grimm, not grim as in bad. Okay, so it has that sort of sense to it with magic and that sort of thing. But all of it is based entirely on a dream that I had. So what I am doing today is I'm going through the story and I'm outlining aspects of that story and how they apply in a spiritual sense. And this is something that I have thought about doing with some of my stories and some of the writing that I've done. But that would be also a lot of work because I would have to not only go back and read the story and put them on the channel or put links to stories, fan fiction, or what have you that is posted on another channel, or not channel, another website. So all of that stuff is being done in that sense. So I was thinking about doing that, and then I was like, wasn't sure. So basically what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull a card, and I'm going to see what my guides want me to know with regards to this particular dream and what the dream is in fact about. Um, what I can suggest is if you are interested in the idea of this dream, please go and watch the videos. There's two of them. I divided it into two because the story is kind of long, but I divided it into two parts, and then you can go and you can hear the story on this channel. So this was done about probably about 3 years ago or so when I was not actively posting to the channel. So I did the two parts of the story, and I read them aloud and I posted them to the channel. So with that said, let me go ahead and shuffle these, and I will pull a card. And as I said before, these shuffle really nicely. Okay, so let's see. My flower is dying, and the little pieces are like falling from it. So with this, what I got is the King of Pentacles, and that is perhaps the good father, the good figure. And the story is actually about a man, so maybe the man in the story is encapsulated by this figure, by the King of Pentacles. And the thing that's kind of interesting about it is pulling the pentacles is actually seeing this and saying, oh, wow, because the story itself is called The Copper Coins. So it's about that concept of money, about pentacles, about the concept of having money and being able to use it for the good or for the not good, whatever it is that you are doing. But it also says that this male figure, this male energy, is a good son or father, provider, etc. So the King of Pentacles is a very, very good card in relation to this dream and in relation to the story. So as I'm reading the story, please think about the King of Pentacles and think about where he comes in relation to the overall story, because I think that it's really quite interesting. And you may see little fluttery things float by. That's the flower. It's losing its petals and stuff, and so all this stuff is falling from the vase. It's behind the mobile. So I just decided to leave it and let it do its thing. And when I'm done, then I can trash it. So At any rate, here we go. This is day number 18. It's May 22nd, 2025, and the dream is called The Copper Coins. Listening to stories about dreams really puts me in the mood for dream discussions. I read somewhere that a dream is a perceived past or future event. I said, can we talk about that before we discuss my dream? Metatron says, of course. I'm seeing that you are gaining enjoyment from this discussion and from the dreams. What is it about dreams that are of such fascination to you? And I said, I don't know. Perhaps the notion that a person could be any time or any place. Yet it seems that the dreams have been centered on humdrum places and still have some hidden meanings. Why is that? And Metatron says, because when you dream of one of those humdrum places, guess what happens? I said, what happens? He says, you remember the message over the story. Let's talk about the dream you had that actually turned into a story. You called it The Copper Coins. You read the story here on your channel, but you lost yourself in the storyline as opposed to embracing the actual message. I said, I love that story. And Metatron says, yes, I know, but the story was significant in its own light. This is another story where instead of being an active player, you were watching it play out. We'll start at the beginning and work our way through. Was the activity of the story like your dream? I said, yes, I think it was. I wrote the story just after the dream had taken place. And Metatron says, so in the dream, you gave it a fairy tale feel. It had a good plot and a spiritual lesson. What do you remember about the lesson? I said, well, it was based on a sermon that I heard by Sky St. John some 15, 16 years ago. It was called No Deed Lacks a Reward. Maybe I was contemplating that. All too often we do a good deed and then we have this issue come up that feels like karma got turned on its head. I thought, what if I could take the dream and turn it into a story with a really profound message or moral to it? In the dream, a young man was getting ready to leave home. His father was a farmer with 3 or 4 other sons, but they were very poor at the beginning of the story. And he knew he had to leave so that his family could survive and work the farm in his absence. He didn't really want to go, but he knew that if he did not go, his family would have no way to provide for him. And as he was the eldest, that was his obligation to do so. Metatron says, he did what many young people do when they come of age. I said, yes. So he set off for the village that was 3 days away by foot. Why is it that all the dreams and the stories have merged into the same idea? Metatron says it happens. You recall the dream and then used it to expound on the other ideas that link all of these things together. The story is a good moral lesson, but it was not entirely based on a dream. When you speak about the bonds of family, you are reflecting on the things you did not have. Leaving home for you was easy, simply because the sense of family was not present with you. What you did in the exploration of his character was through the relationship he had with his own family. The close-knit family was something you could not easily sense, so you used it as a means for this man's situation to be a little bit more extreme. He loved his family and could barely imagine his life without them. The dynamics of this family were what made the act of leaving all the more difficult for him. I said, yes, it's true. That's probably why I had a different set of experiences as opposed to him. But it may explain why I felt as though I was watching it play out as opposed to being an active participant. Metatron says, that is true. You do often have dreams where you do not feel as though you are an active player. Conceptually, it's like watching a movie or seeing a lesson play out and have it impact the person um, and who as merely an observation as opposed to actually having the lesson play out for you as a person. Many times you have dreams that play out like that movie, and the lesson is there, makes it feel better and more concise. So what happened after the man left home? I said he started off for the town, and en route to the town, he encountered four people who had found themselves in a predicament. Three men and one woman were standing at the side of a road next to an overturned carriage. Instead of leaving them stranded, he offers to help them. Unfortunately, the three men decide to use his good intentions to their own advantage. Metatron says, okay, let's unpack this idea. The young man has the good intentions of helping someone in need, and his good intentions are basically taken advantage of. Have you ever done something to help someone and someone else essentially steals your idea and harms your good intention? I said, yes, that's happened rather often. People use my trust and then they abuse it. And I went on to say, yes, that makes me wary of trusting other people. And Metatron says, yet you do. You trust in the goodwill of other people. So in the story or in the dream, you see this young man trusting the other men. What did you do? What did you think of that time about that line about the man or the other men's intentions? I said there was a part of me that would say, be careful. These men have no good intentions. It is the same thing with people who send friend requests to me online, specifically men. And Metatron says, why do you suppose they do that? I said, well, about 5 or so years ago, I was on Twitter, and there was this guy following me there. I think nothing of it, and I follow him back. Then I get a direct message from him. He's laying it on pretty thick, thinking that I might be interested in hooking up with him. Of course, I'm not, but he's asking me about myself, personal questions. So I decide to keep my responses very, very vague. When he asks, where do you live? I say, Germany. Then he like, where in Germany? And I will say the German Bundesland, which is the state. He keeps going on and on, digging for information, and I'm offering very vague answers. And then he comes out and says, I don't think you're happy with your husband. That's what he said. And I am like, Whiskey, Tango, Foxtrot. I mean, how does a woman respond to a bloke who comes on and says something like that? Let's just say if we had been in a bar instead of DMs or on Twitter, I would have probably thrown my drink in his face and stormed off. This is the kind of condescension that I think the character in the dream or story was dealing with. He did not want to appear rude, but I think his response to these men was akin to that. Metatron says, yes, I can see where you would not necessarily want to trust any of those people. So he does help them. What happens? I said, well, they basically coerce him into carrying their stuff. They clearly did not want to pull their weight, but being the caring person that he is, he does it. To this day, I cannot comprehend why he would. Metatron says, if he hadn't have, the story would have no flow. I said, yeah, that's true. So as it is getting dark later in the day, the young man sees the spirit of his mother. She tells him in the lesson, no deed lacks a reward. It's a pretty common lesson in stories. One of the stories that this is a case in point about is Frau Holle, which is a very good story, but I digress. Metatron says the main lesson of the whole story. That was the lesson you did not forget. I said, no, because I see it in the playing out all the time. Some people call it karma. And Metatron says, it is indeed true. Most people have a difficult time understanding the universal energies. They ask themselves, why is it that people are so unwilling to ask themselves when they do a bad deed and expect something good to come out of it? This becomes an underlying question, and people are simply willing to grasp that like energies attract like energies. I said, yes, and when things don't go the way they intended or planned, they whine about how it is that they have been cheated. The truth is, the moral of the story, what you put in is what you get out. And Metatron says, there you go. So tell me what happened in the dream or story that elaborates that point. I said, okay, so the next day, as they're walking towards the town, the young man lags behind the group, and when he catches up to them, there is a large pile of coins on the ground, gold, silver, and copper ones, all over, strewn all about. The three men are avidly collecting the coins, but only the silver and gold coins. The copper ones they just leave on the ground. These were perceived to be the most valuable. At any rate, the group of men finish collecting the gold and silver coins, leave the copper ones on the ground. The young man begins to collect these coins, and he is instantly scoffed at about taking some useless copper coins. The men are saying that he is slowing them down, and collecting the coins would only make the journey even slower than it already was. At this point, it feels like the men are being rewarded for their greed and unconscionable behavior. Metatron says, showing that appearances can be very deceiving. Think about this. People are openly upset that the president is getting a, quote, free plane, unquote. That plane could be taxed with issues, and like your story, it's showing that appearances can be very deceiving. You know and understand this. And the story depicts that very well. The reader, upon reading about the coins, have this notion that evil will ultimately be rewarded. But how does it really go? The men go into all of this believing that they are as rich as the king, but yet they have attained all of the fortune by doing absolutely nothing. You know, the ultimate outcome of this dream of this dream or story, but now you must tell us what has happened upon the group reaching town. I said, well, when they got into town, the men are smugly saying that they have all this money and that they would be able to hire someone to transport their belongings to the castle. And they were thinking, oh, we no longer have to work as a noblewoman servant. They then dig into their bags, and instead of pulling out coins, they pull out fistfuls of sand. All of their coins have turned into sand. Metatron says, and the hero of the story, what happened to his coins? I said, well, he suddenly reaches into his bag and pulls out a gold coin. All of the copper coins that he had been carrying turned to gold. Metatron says, no deed lacks a reward. I said, yes, but the men accused him of stealing from them. Metatron says, don't they always? Those who believe themselves to be the victim will always look for someone to blame. You are seeing the same dynamic play out. Stories and dreams that are often told in a dreamlike state are often the depictions of lessons or ideas that reach beyond simple stories. Dreams are like schools. They can teach us a lesson, but only if one is willing to learn. Sometimes the most difficult task is to pick out the nuggets of wisdom that are within the idea of a dream. When you have a dream that makes no sense to you, wake from a dream with a simple thought, it will do a good deed. I will do a good deed, or I will offer help to a person in need. Then the dream will have served its purpose. And there is no need for you to remember more of that. There is a significant idea when it comes to dreams and their lessons. The universe will let you take the dream and turn it into a story with a moral lesson. This becomes a very prolific thing, and the dream becomes a fable of sorts with a life lesson about the role of karma and the overall human experience. I said, it was a pretty nice dream, but it was, as you said, presented like I was watching it as a movie. And Metatron says that's the beauty of dreams. When a story forms and becomes inspired from the dream, and you have the faculty to share them with others, then that is a good thing. And I said, thank you. That was very nice, very nice. And he said, anytime. And that's where we ended. So, as you can see, the young man in the dream is this King of Pentacles, a good man, kind, honest, open, and he is willing to help others, but not at his own detriment. And he encapsulates this idea that he is a good, honest, and caring individual. And his actions reaped reward, prosperity. The next card is the Ace of Swords. This is the Ace of Truth, or the Sword of Truth. And he never lied. He never told an untruth. He was always honest and very straightforward. And he helped, even to his own detriment, he helped because he understood the idea that his actions would have consequences. And actions, regardless if they're good actions or bad actions, they will have a result. There will be a result that will come out. That will be the truth of all of the things that are happening. The action that this man decided to take was of goodness and of kindness. And the result to that was he became very wealthy. And I won't tell you what happened to him after that because you can go back and listen to the story. But at any rate, this is the truth. This is what happened, and this was the what came about. The next card is the Nine of Cups, and again, this is the kind-hearted man who has made a decision to be kind and to do good. And what happens? He gets a cup raised to him. Here you are, you have money, you are able to buy food, you can go home, you can do all of the things that you wish to do. Your dreams are coming to fruition, and it was because you are a kind and good person and you made the right decisions. Seven of Pentacles. Again, harvest. The harvest of good comes about, and you're prospering from that good deed. You are prosperous because you have decided to do a good deed and to share with others. And that's the moral lesson that goes along with the story. And finally, the Magician. Somewhere there has to be magic in there. And there's magic in every moment, as Dan Fogelberg sang. The magician is the one who can create and make things really beautiful. And I'm going to go ahead and pull the book here and read the Magician just as a close. The magician looks directly at us with a concentrated gaze. Before him we see the four elements of the tarot represented the tools of his trade magically. The mysteriously suspended in the air which he has mastered through dedication and concentration of will. A bright light emanates from above his head. He is the link between heaven and earth that brings forth the manifestation of matter. We are aware that we are in the presence of a master with fine-tuned abilities and skills. The number one represents creative potential and power, the beginning. And there we go. The outcome is, and interestingly enough, we have pentacles, we have swords, we have wands. We have pentacles, we have swords, and we have cups, but no wands. But yet we have the magician at the very end. So, no deed lacks a reward. Thank you, Sky St. John, for this wonderful message. I still remember it even 15 years later. And even after you transitioned, I still remember it. And that lesson has become a story. And that story will live on. Thank you. I wish you a wonderful day. Take care. Have a beautiful, beautiful day. And as always, namaste.